Preparing to live stream. You got that? We are now live. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the John Lavenia Success Mastermind. This is today's general session on Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. I am your humble host, Stuart Wilde, a student of mindset, personal development, prosperity consciousness, all kinds of cool stuff, entrepreneurism, and it's always an honor for me to be here and explore some ideas and chat with you guys about things that are on my mind and things that I think can benefit all of us as we are all in our journeys of self-examination and personal betterment. So, I do these sessions every 2 weeks, and it's always kind of a bizarre thing because it seems like it just happened yesterday. And so 2 weeks ago, we did an epic session on the 7 Hermetic principles for self-mastery. And as our friend John Lavenia had so aptly said, that these are really just universal laws. Forget about Hermeticism and things like that. Good morning, Catherine. Nice to see you. And then a couple weeks before that, we had done mental and spiritual alchemy for personal development. And during that session, our friend Glenn Henderson brought something up about the difference between fault and responsibility. And we kind of had a little chat about, at any given moment in your life, you have the ability to take personal responsibility and be accountable for all the events and circumstances in your life, right? And it's just about understanding that we are the product, in our lives and experiences and circumstances are the product of the choices that we've made, right, throughout our lives. And the concept of blame and talking about fault, and that's more of a victim, helpless kind of mentality. And so that kind of triggered me towards where I wanted to go today. And then last week, we also started talking about, and some people, I believe it was Gail and some other folks, maybe Linda, we were talking about the principle of vibration and how everything vibrates and that all matter is essentially the same. And it's really just about frequency and vibration, and what makes, a glass of water is the same thing that makes a table, is the same thing that makes a rock, is the same thing that makes a watermelon, right? And so taking both of those kind of larger concepts, I came up with today's topic, which is the vocabulary overhaul. It is something that I've wanted to talk about for a while. John, you and I have waxed prophetic about being wordsmiths and being really careful and selective and intentional about the words that we use. And we all know that words have power, words shape our lives, words create our reality, words have vibration. Hello, Virginia, nice to see you. And so, yeah, today I put together a little presentation about vocabulary and how to avoid using negative, harmful, limiting words in our lives and in our businesses. And as usual, my plan is to take us on a little journey from one place to another, because that's how these sessions always work for me. And every one of these Tuesday sessions I do tends to be a journey of my own personal transformation and development. And so I'm happy to share this with you guys today. So let me share my screen. Hi, Mandy, nice to see you. And now give me a thumbers. Can you see me? Can you see my screen here? Yeah, okay, good enough. All right. The vocabulary overhaul, how to avoid using negative, limiting, harmful words and phrases in our lives and in our businesses. And of course, in the beginning was the beginning, right? And many of you that are biblically or scripturally inclined would recognize this as the opening words of the New Testament, right? John 1:1. And of course, this is just the first part of it, but in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and help me out, John, and the Word was good, and
was made flesh.
Somebody look that up for me. I wrote it down. Let's see. But anyway, the concept of to me, what this translates to, pun intended, is that our words are creative, and that the things that we utter, the words that we speak, right? We talk about how thoughts are things, but if you take it a step further, right, words are sort of the next step in evolution of the vibrations that emanate from us, right? So the words that we use have the power to create, have the power to destroy, and it's no surprise or coincidence that the opening lines of the New Testament have to do with the power of the creative word, right? And of course, in this part, we're talking about the word of God, but as Joseph Campbell and Neville Goddard tell us, you know, we are creators, and we create with our thoughts, we create with our words, right? Now, in the New Testament, in Greek, you have a couple of words. One is called logos, and one is called rhema. Most of you have heard the term logos. Many of you, I imagine, have not heard the term rhema. Logos is the written word of God as it is in the Bible, right? And it tends to be as powerful as the written word is. It tends to be passive and objective or subjective. Rhema is what's considered to be the utterance, right? The om, the spoken word of God that creates or destroys, right? So that's the active and creative aspect of this. And of course, we all know that words have power, and just like thoughts are things, words are things as well. And I would venture or posture to say that words are one step more tangible than thoughts, right? And we're talking about sound vibration that emanates from our bodies. And of course, we know that not only the thoughts that we think go out into the universe and attract and create and manifest. Well, again, take that to the next level with the words that we utter. And again, the principle of vibration that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that everything vibrates, right? And that when we speak, we create sound waves that go out into the universe, into the ethers, out into our immediate environment. It creates something called resonance or sympathetic vibration, right? And the concept I always use, or the example I always use, is you pluck one string on a guitar, and then the other strings all start to vibrate in resonance with that, right? And so to me, this is in practice how this works, that, you know, the vibrations that emanate from our bodies, from our mouths, affect everything around us, not only ourselves, right? So our words can create our reality for positive or negative. And again, the impact is not only on ourselves, but it's on everyone around us in our immediate circle. And of course, in theory, everyone else around us, butterfly effect, right? The whole universe. And so with that comes an implied responsibility, because if we have an impact on other people around us in our immediate spheres, but also in our not so immediate spheres, right? Carlos Castaneda talks about protecting ourselves from other people's thoughts, right? Well, you know, I think it's probably just as important, and maybe more important, to be able to protect ourselves from other people's words, right? And this concept of, you know, maybe, you know, talking ill of others. And I know that there's, you know, quite a bit of verbiage in that in the Bible, but this concept of, you know, watching what we say, because words can not only create, but words can also cause harm. And not only that, the words we use tend to reveal the limiting beliefs about ourselves that we have, that we may not even realize. So I want to dive into a little bit of this today. But before I get into the words, I want to talk a little bit about science. So kinesiology, John, you and I have talked a little bit about kinesiology and muscle testing and things like that. And so just like you can, you know, hold an item, medicine, food, whatever, a book, whatever it is, and that you can be muscle tested to see if that strengthens you or weakens you. Well, guess what? If you speak negative words, if somebody holds an index card with a negative word in front of you, it weakens you. It drains your strength. It drains your energy. And this is proven. With brain MRIs, check this. They've done studies where they flash negative words in front of people, and then they do a brain scan of them. and it increases their stress hormones, and it impairs brain function in the sense of logical thinking, critical thinking, decision making, and things like that. And then, of course, I start thinking, you guys know that I'm a big fan of ancient cultures and ancient religions, right? So I start thinking about mantras and, Om Mani Padme Hum and things like that. And kirtan, which is Hindu spiritual chanting. I think about the Gyoto monks in Tibet, if you've listened to those guys, and honestly, Benedictine and other, any kind of chanting prayers, right? These are, ancient scientific methods used to increase our vibration or to create a result around us, right? So the Om, the creative Om is, one example of that. So have you ever seen The Secret Intelligence of Water and Masaru Emoto's water crystal experiments? You guys should look this up. Here's a very brief example. So what he did was he took water bottles and water crystals, and he would either speak to them or he would put on little labels, things like, thank you, I love you, I hate you, you fool, angels, all these different things, you make me sick, right? And so if you look at, and then he would look at those water crystals under a microscope. And so if the words that we use, and the thoughts that we think can change the shape of water molecules and water crystals, imagine what this does in our own bodies, right? We are 70-ish% water, right? And so imagine, this is real time, biofeedback about, what happens in our bodies when we are not in our right mind and right speech, right? And, one of the tenets of Buddhism, aside from right livelihood and, right thinking is right speech, right? And so again, you look at something that's like saying thank you, and it's this magical, beautiful, crystalline, perfect shape. And then you look at something like you make me sick at the bottom, or evil, right? And you see the distorted, twisted shapes that makes in water crystals. So again, that happens in our own bodies. And that just blows me away. So yeah, if you haven't seen that stuff, check out Masaru Emoto's water crystal experiments. And then another thing that I'm just fascinated by is the study or the science of cymatics. And if you guys haven't heard of cymatics, you should look it up. There's some really great videos. Obviously, we don't want to create any copyright issues for John. So I'll leave that to you guys to look up. But the concept of cymatics is essentially the study or the science of the effects of sound on matter. Okay. And this guy, this is what's called a Chaldini plate, Chaldni. You can look it up. But essentially, it's a metal plate that has a little motor that vibrates at certain frequencies. And typically, there's a little dial, and you can set it for certain hertz and kilohertz and things like that. And what they'll do is they'll take sand or salt or different solids, or different solids with other things like glycerin and different things on there, and they'll start vibrating this plate, and they start turning the dial at different frequencies. And this at one point was just a pile of sand on this plate, right? And then what happens is matter starts to arrange itself based on the vibrations, right? So that's kind of the concept of cymatics. We've got a couple of things of cymatics in practice, right? So when that same plate gets turned up to 345 hertz, you get this kind of starfish, four-pointed star. Then you hit 1033, and things start getting more and more and more complex, right? And so the higher the vibration that this plate is moving at, you start to see more and more complex and intricate arrangements of matter, right? And so to me, this is a very powerful way and a visual way of understanding how sound and vibration shapes not only our immediate world, but the universe around us, right? Look at that 5907 hertz. Look at how it's like the flower of life, you know, amazing stuff. And so check this out. So at a certain point, now I first experienced this at, you guys ever go to one of these like Explorama, Exploratoriums? John, you got kids, right? You go to, they're like children's museum kind of places, and they've got like the science room with different things and the pendulums and all this kind of stuff. This is where I first got exposed to the Caldini plate. And, you know, you start playing around with this dial, and it starts out by making these geometric patterns that, you know, you guys see here. But at a certain point, you hit certain frequencies and certain vibrations, and those sand crystals or salt crystals start forming three-dimensional shapes that start leaping off of the plate and start forming actual physical bodies, if you would. And again, it just blew me away looking at this stuff. So this is just again, there's videos of things that like literally like things that are shaped like people and animals, and things just start moving across these plates depending on where you're turning this dial, right? And so again, this is the concept to me of the principle of vibration, or the law of vibration, in practice. You can see these are three-dimensional objects that start forming around crystals and particles of matter, right? And so I'll take this to the next level, and kaboom, right? And so when we talk about the way that the universe is formed, I start thinking about the nebula, right? And these gaseous clouds. This is the Horsehead Nebula. I'm sure this is one of, you know, NASA's most famous pictures from the Hubble telescope. So that little horsehead there is 3.5 light years across. So think about that for a minute. If you guys know what a light year is, right? It's traveling at the speed of light for a year, right? And so of course we're not even there yet. But, you know, each of those things is a star with its own solar system around it. And stars are born out of these gaseous clouds and these nebulas that, you know, rise for thousands of light years across the universe. And now scientists are talking about that it's actually vibration and sound that create the forms out of these gaseous clouds, right? So to me, this is going back to the power of the word, the power of creation. And so if I haven't express to you my own passion and interest and fascination with how sound is creative, you know, this is really the epitome of that kind of thing. This is called the Cat's Eye Nebula. And so they look at these gas clouds across the universe, and they actually, you can see the pattern in the middle there. It looks very much like what is on that Caldini plate at a certain hertz, at a certain frequency, right? And so they've been able to sort of match and look at these forms throughout the universe. And again, these things are light years across. The Earth is probably less than a pinpoint in something like this, right? So again, it's just fascinating to me. So with that, we're going to talk about what I call the nocabulary, okay? Meaning words that maybe we should consider eliminating from our vocabulary. And of course, at the end of all this, I want to hear what you guys think about some of this, because some of these might be a little controversial for you, like, oh, well, I use that and I don't have a problem with that. Well, great, we'll talk about it. Obviously, the first one that comes to mind is, you know, limiting word like can't, right? And I honestly, guys, honestly, that's another one, a qualifier. I take issue with even putting some of these words on paper and showing them to you, because again, words have power, right? And we know that they can weaken us and lower our vibration. So in the name of science and demonstration, forgive me for, you know, putting these things in front of your faces, okay? So can't, what I try to do is give you a little example of like maybe how, what we can replace those words with, right? So of course the word can't is this limiting belief that, you know, you are powerless, helpless, unable to make change or be cause in your life, right? So I will always catch myself saying things like I can't. Honestly, I almost never say that except as an example. So we like to use can or will. And again, any of these that strike you, jot down some notes, and at the end when we compare, you know, when you guys participate, you know, tell me, oh, I use this for that. Of course, impossible is a word that I have just eliminated from my vocabulary. John, both you and I have walked on fire, and some of you have done other similar amazing feats that, to me, it wasn't so much about walking on fire. It was about redefining what I thought was possible, impossible, things like that. And that was a life-changing moment for me. So I use, obviously, possible, probable, doable. Failure, in all of our mindset books, Napoleon Hill, how many times does he use the word failure in Think and Grow Rich, and all these mindset books. The only time and of course, Dorothea Brandt, right? Failure is not an option and all that kind of stuff. That's really the only time that I ever even acknowledge that this word exists is in a book study, or if I'm, looking at somebody else using it. I'm, and how many different mindset quotes about, failure is just, your last attempt before success, or, all these kinds of things. And to me, I never would say to myself, I failed at this, or I was a failure at that. To me, that is just that it's very cringy and hurts me in my heart. So I have eliminated that word 98% from my vocabulary, except talking about it as something you shouldn't say. I'm not a fan of the word mistake, right? Because I don't believe there's mistakes or coincidences. I'll say things like, I learned a lesson in this, or, what I got out of it. And so to me, one person's mistake is another person's growth experience, right? The word if is interesting because obviously, and all these things tend to have their place, right? And so I'm also not saying that they should be eliminated from the English language and all that kind of stuff. But really what I'm saying is we should just be conscious about how and when we use words like this. If implies an unpredictable outcome, right? And we talk about in this mastermind, we talk about having a definite purpose. We talk about, no, failure is not an option, things like that. And the word if just implies that that there's an unknown outcome that's outside of your control. If this happens, right, you want to be more intentional about the words that you use. So I use words like when, because when implies that there's actually a predictable, expected outcome. The H word, I take issue with the H word, and when I hear people use it, I just think it's one of those words that is really harmful to you on a personal level. So I have done my best to eliminate it. And if I'm averse to something, if I don't like it, I'll say, oh, I don't like it, or I'll use qualifiers like, oh, I really don't like that, or that really, or and later I'll talk a little bit about how to separate ourselves from some of these words, and how to maybe downplay things. But you could say, there's a part of me that really XYZ, right? And it's a way of separating yourself from it as you're training yourself not to use some of these words. Hope might be one of those words that you guys will take issue with me on. I have an issue with the word hope, right? Hope to me implies that that there's something out of your control. Like wish is another one of those words, right? That you're not cause, and that you don't have the ability to affect the outcome of a situation. And when you just say hope, it's like, oh well, I hope that this happens. Whereas any other of these words or substitutes implies that you have control over the outcome. So instead of saying I hope something will happen, you can say I believe this will happen, or I know this will happen, or I trust that this will happen. And then of course there's try or trying. This is a word, and every time I catch myself, and some of you guys may agree, I catch myself saying things like I'm trying to do this, or I'm trying to do that. And of course, again, that's another one of those implying that you don't have ultimate control. And one of my favorite Star Wars quotes from Master Yoda, right? There is no try, only do. And so when I catch myself saying, I'm going to try, I'll substitute that with, I'm working on this, or I will do this, right? Because again, it implies an intention. It implies a level of commitment. Trying almost implies that you're not 1,000% committed to the outcome, right? Here's a couple others. Should, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? I should have done this. I should have done that. This tends to be, at least from my understanding and what I think about it, is this self-inflicted guilt trip, right? And instead of saying I should have done this, maybe we say next time I will do this, right? Because it implies the lesson learned and what you're going to do in the future, instead of beating yourself up over a lesson that you have learned about an experience that you've had. Maybe is another one of those words, right? And we talk about decision and having a definite purpose and a sense of definiteness when we take action. And maybe is one of those things that implies that you're not 100% committed to the outcome, right? You are or you aren't. Maybe is one of those flimsy, wishy-washy words that you might consider getting rid of in your vocabulary. Always and never, and again, they have their place, but we have a tendency to weaponize always and never, especially in relationships, right? And you guys know what I'm talking about when you're like, oh, you always do this or you never do that, and the reality is it's not the truth. It's almost never, and this is the maybe the appropriate use of the word, right? But it's almost never the case. It tends to be a false statement when you're generalizing. It's a generalization, right? And you're saying, oh, you always do that, but the reality is it's usually not like that. That's better than saying never, right? Usually not like that. The words just and only are what they call quantifiers, and so these are modifying words that change the definition of other words. And a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago, one of the sessions that I did was about what I called the greatest excuse, saying you're only human, right? Using your humanity as an excuse, for making, for erring or for, having flaws. And yet, to me, being human, right, is this divine, limitless potentialness that is not, should not have a qualifier or a quantifier in front of it, right? And in things like business, and when you're like writing emails and when you're talking to customers or maybe superiors in your business, and you say things like, I'm just this, I'm just getting in touch with you, right? It's almost this apologetic, kind of meek way of trying to say something, when the reality is you could eliminate the word just. I'm only doing this, blah, blah, blah. You can literally get rid of that and watch how the meaning and of your sentence changes dramatically if you eliminate those qualifier, quantifier words. The word but, right? And you guys probably know this one as well. But when you say the word but, it essentially negates everything that you've said prior to that. So you can have a great compliment that you give somebody, and oh man, you're the coolest person I know, and you're so amazing, and yada yada. But right, and so you're just saying, yeah, I said all this stuff, and I didn't really mean it. So the word that there's ways to get rid of the word but in your vocabulary, and it has to do with maybe substituting with the word and. And if you try to do that, every time you want to say but, use the word and again, notice how it changes the tone, the definition, and even the words that you then choose to use after that to finish your sentence, because it implies intention, it implies focus versus saying something and then taking it back. Someday is another one of those things. John, you've probably heard people say, someday isn't on my calendar, right? So it's this concept of another one of these lack of commitment to outcome. If you say, oh yeah, so, and I think it was Brian Tracy. I saw a Brian Tracy talk years ago when I first joined the mastermind, John. And he talked about someday I'll, and he kind of talked about it like a place, like island, right? Like someday I'll, like, oh, I'm going to someday I'll. And, you know, he's saying someday I'll do this, someday I'll do that. And again, it implies that, you know, you kind of have a half a dream that you're not really committed to the outcome of. And then, of course, there's, you know, the why me, the poor me, the pity party, self-indulgence, self-importance, as Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda would call it. And of course, these are victimizing words, right? So anything that you use that turns you into the victim, whether it goes back to that fault versus responsibility and blame and things like that, probably a good idea to stop beating ourselves up and self guilt tripping and self victimizing ourselves. Here's some other ones that are pretty interesting that we tend to use. These are more like filler words that we use that we use without really using the actual meaning of these words, right? We tend to use the word absolutely, you know, to answer a question. And the, you know, the real definition of absolutely is, you know, the essential truth of something. And so we tend to overuse. These aren't necessarily words that should just be eliminated, but again, we should be conscious of when and how we use these things. If it's just to fill space in a sentence, then maybe we should rethink it, right? And, you know, if everything is awesome and amazing, then nothing is awesome and amazing, right? Right? Awesome is awe-inspiring, and amazing is, you know, this incredible phenomenon that you're witnessing. And so if everything is awe-inspiring, and maybe that's true, but in the way that we tend to use it, we wind up doing a disservice to some of these words. Literally is one of those that is almost a license to then use the exact opposite or tell an untruth afterwards. Like, I literally died after seeing that, or whatever, you know. And I'm sure we all know people that use the word literally. Oh my God, it was literally the worst thing that ever happened, right? And the reality is that it probably wasn't, right? And so maybe, again, we should really think about how we use these things. We've talked about using the word honestly as a qualifier at the beginning of your sentence. I want to say, I think in Wake Up and Live, Dorothea Brandt talks about some of these filler words as well, and qualifier words. Or, you know, if you start a sentence with honestly, yada, yada, or to be honest, da, 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 it implies that the rest of the time you're speaking, maybe you're not being honest, right? And so, and I'm guilty of some of these things as well. So it's really, this, you know, this stuff for me is just as much about reminding myself of some of the things that I try to be aware of in the words that I use. Actually is another one of those things. Actually implies, when you say something like, actually, it's this, or actually, and when you use it in a conversation with somebody, what you're essentially saying is you're implying the other person is wrong. Right? You're saying, actually, it's this way. And actually, it's not what you think, it's this. Actually, it's not what you're saying it is, or actually, it's not the way you should do it. And there's other ways to express disagreement that doesn't come off as sarcastic or judgmental or insulting, right? Just saying is another one of those. Like, I'm just saying, and everything, and then pretty much everything that you say, you know, before or after that is, you know, you're almost giving yourself license to be insulting and judgmental. And again, you know, I want to hear what you guys think about some of this stuff. And then here's a classic one, no offense. And then that gives you license to say something offensive, right? No offense, but, you know, your hair looks terrible today, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? It's this concept of giving yourself permission to be rude, right? So, you know, we should think about these things. And then there's the classic fillers, like, you know, and I think growing up, you know, if you grew up in the 80s or, you know, 90s, the word like, you know, was used quite a bit. That was my next one. Right, fillers like this that almost imply a lack of intelligence, or keep doing it, right? This is hard, this is tough to do, right? We need to be conscious of all these things, because if we're conscious about the words we use and we don't use filler words, then we're not trying to fill space with words that don't mean anything. How's that? That was a pretty good couple of sentences without using any of those filler words. You know is another one, right? It's a way of saying, trying to get agreement from somebody, implying that maybe they didn't know something. So using you know over and over again is something that we should consider eliminating from our vocabulary. I'm really trying to be conscious now of getting rid of some of these fillers. Here we go. Words of power, right? So not only do words have power, but I like to talk about words of power. And so prayer, of course, is what you might consider the ultimate in terms of words of power. And I think about Joseph Murphy in Power of Your Subconscious Mind, and he talks about scientific prayer and being intentional with how we pray. So we could talk a little bit more about that. I know some of you guys lean into the religious realm, but we can talk about, prayer versus mantras versus self-talk, positive affirmations, things like that, using the I am method. And, this works the opposite way too. So if you were to say things like, I am something negative, right? Those things are powerful. So to fill that blank with something positive and empowering is just that, right? It's empowering. I am powerful. I am limitless. I am smart, resourceful, amazing, divine, right? Fill in the blanks there. Other words of power are, let's say, something that you might say at the end of an affirmation that will seal it in stone, sort of a la Neville Goddard or Joseph Murphy. So must it be, or so shall it be, kind of then, puts the nail in the seal of manifestation of the thing that you just asked for, or the thing that you said. Murphy talks about by divine decree. I want to say, I remember in some of those chapters, in his chapters of scientific prayer. The Neville Goddard, it is so, or it is already done, right? So you have sort of a statement or an affirmation that you make, and then you kind of, supercharge it with this statement that it is done. It is already a fact. And I want to hear your thoughts on some of this in terms of the sealing the deal with your affirmations. And then, as far as implementation, because it's all cool to talk about that stuff, but really, what this is, the first part, of course, is being mindful and aware of the words that we choose, the words that we use, being selective. Then, like any other skill that is to be honed or developed, you got to practice it, right? It doesn't just come naturally. You heard the filler words that come out of my mouth as I say some of these things. So it's really just about being aware, not beating yourself up too much about it, and developing this skill. And then the concept of downplaying and separating yourself from using these words. So if you find yourself about to say a word that you might not think is the most positive, you can separate yourself from it a little bit and saying, oh, well, a part of me feels like this, right? And then you're not owning it 100%. You're not totally identifying yourself with that negative thought or that negative word. In my opinion, being selective and mindful of the words that we choose is one of the most powerful tools of personal transformation, because really you choose the words that you use, right? Words are things. And to me, this is a fast track to personal transformation. Nice quote from our friend James Allen: right thinking begins with the words we say to ourselves. I don't know who Yehuda Berg is, but I found this very cool quote. Maybe one of you guys know who he is. Words have energy and power to help, to heal, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, and to humble. Wonderful quote from the Buddha: words have the power to destroy and to heal. When words are both true and kind, they can change the world. And then this is my little quote: change your words, change your life. And here's a nice little visual, right, of course, of the vibrational power of the words that we choose. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to open the floor. Oh, you did the Explorer, Virginia. Very cool. So yeah, guys, I'm going to open it up. I want to hear what you have to say about all this and what you think about words. And I see John with his hand up. Hit me, brother. Let's hear what you got to say.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. There was a chapter in Integrity is Everything called "What Did You Say?" was the title of the chapter, and it's exactly this. It's now you brought up a lot more examples. So this is a nice dissertation and expansion on that. But the ones that I see myself almost never using, because I'm attempting to be as conscious as possible of what comes out of my mouth. Need. That's the killer. That one right there. And so many people, I just hear they just throw that word around. I believe that we've always had everything we've needed. If we really want to get honest with ourselves, right? Because if not, you'd be a corpse, right? I mean, that's it. You didn't get what you needed. You're out. Well, you're still in. So you got what you needed, right? And in the book that we're reading right now, Stop Worrying and Start Living, which I'm really enjoying. We covered the first 5 chapters last night. But it talks about, you mentioned prayer, right? So give us this day our daily bread, this day's bread, this day, right? So just like, people can, worry about where's my supply coming from tomorrow. And they can also put their attention on work that cannot be done today. In fact, this just came up last night. The idea of, do today's work today, present time, right? 100% effective, focused. And then tomorrow, tomorrow's work will be addressed tomorrow. So these are just some of the things, talking about the words, these are some of the things that I can look at where, I've allowed myself to expend energy on unnecessary anxiety simply because I wasn't conscious enough of, keeping my times straight. Here I am with all these talking and considerations about the past or the future, right? So, which is a lie. It's a lie. So I think we'd like to lie to ourselves a lot. But if we're awake, or if we've got another awake person that can check us on that, not to be, overbearing or pointing the finger, but, to help us, right? Is what friends do. And so, anyway, thank you. Thank you for this. This was great stuff.
Hey, thank you. You brought up a couple of good points, that the need, I need to do this, I have to do this, right? When you say need, it implies sort of a victimhood. When you say I have to, it implies that there's maybe a chore or something you don't want to do, right? So, I get to do this, or I choose to do that. Again, I think a lot of it is about finding empowering substitutes for the words that we tend to use like that. And then you mentioned the Lord's Prayer. And I've read the Lord's Prayer in its original Aramaic. And I think it's a book called The Cosmic Dance. And it's literally, they take each paragraph or each passage, and they take the Aramaic translations, which is almost like Inuit, where they have 1,000 words for snow. And they'll break that down. And that part about our daily bread, right? Bread is really almost a mistranslation, because really, and as you're implying, it's much more about sustenance, our spiritual food, than just a slice of Wonder Bread or whatever that might be. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's awesome. Excellent. Virginia, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Let's see. Y'all want to see me still in my pajamas?
Nice.
Good
Are you getting
morning.
over your llama romance?
No, I'm in love with Chico, the fiercest one in your pack that you made me go nose to nose with. The one that was going to get put down because he was so aggressive. This is the one he makes me go nose to nose with. He was wonderful. Anyway, so this is amazing because this is something that since I've gotten back, which has only been a few days, has resonated well with me. I just did some seminars, which I would love if you have 5 minutes after this call. I want to talk to you about this topic on an income level. I know you're busy, but I want to talk to you for 5 minutes after this call. And the book that Linda sent the JLSM book club yesterday, that free copy of Dale Carnegie's book that you guys are doing. I read it years ago. I'm not going to participate. I don't worry, and I'm already living life. However, when she sent that and it went up to eBay, there was one that popped up under, no, I'm sorry, not eBay, YouTube. You know how YouTube is, you get all those others. And it was Exactly What to Say by Phil Jones. I'm going to throw that out there because it was all talking about in our delivery, in our direct sales, in our pitches, instead of saying this, try saying this. And it's not as offensive and it's not demeaning, and it was really a great book. I like it so well. I was an audio. I just actually ordered it so I can have it in print. But yeah, the words are so powerful. We've looked at episodes of, what was it, Speaking into a Jar with the lid closed, and the beans or something. And we've also looked at plants, experiments that elementary school kids have done where they speak positive words over one plant and it thrives, and identical plant, they speak the negative words and it shrivels up. And Give Us This Day Our Daily Bread reminds me of the manna when the Egyptians were crossing and fleeing Pharaoh, and then they would get their manna every day, and they could only pick as much as they needed for that day. They could only pick up this like little pieces of dough. If they picked more than they needed for that day for their family, the next day it was sour and rotten. They couldn't eat it. They could only take what they needed for that day. So yeah, wonderful topic. I love it immensely. And I'm guilty of so many of those latter words, absolutely or actually, or and that on there. So thank you. Great topic.
Awesome. Thank you. You brought up a couple of things for me. First of all, manna, as you guys see my mushroom fungus poster that's behind me all the time. As a wilderness guide and as an outdoors person, one of my favorite things to do is forage for wild mushrooms. And I'll cut you off there with, we're not talking about those kind of mushrooms. I'm talking about food, right? I'm talking about our daily bread, right? And I have heard that analogy that the manna is related to that. And with that, one of the things that I've read about manna is that it is quite possible or probable that manna may have actually been a fungus or a mushroom that grew in the desert after the dew of the morning, and it just appeared on the ground. And of course, we can talk about miracles and all that kind of stuff, but at the same time, very, very interesting concept, because I'm a mushroom guy, so that's where I go to. One of the things you made me realize, talking about business and the words that we use. Let's say you're a couple minutes late to a meeting, and instead of saying, "I'm sorry, I'm late," you walk in, "Oh, sorry, I'm late," right? Thank you for your patience and understanding while I was predisposed, right? And the concept of substituting appreciation for apology, right? And there are times where we should apologize as well, but when we say sorry about every little thing, then it becomes a demeaning, depreciating demeaning, self-demeaning approach at things. So yeah, I really appreciate you bringing up, the words that we use or choose to use in business. Hi, Lynn, what's up? What do you think about the cymatics and the science and the creation of the universe and all that stuff?
Yeah, just sort of flipping back to the beginning of the book. I've actually had kinesiology, so I know exactly how it's incredibly simple. Like you hold on herbs to see if they're good for you or not, and then they do this thing, and it's like, yeah, no, they're not, or whatever. So that's the cymatics. So is it cymatics? What's it?
Cymatics. Yes.
Cymatics fascinated the hell out of me because I don't know, are you familiar with Bridget Riley's work from the 70s artist Bridget Riley?
No.
It was exactly like it was pop art back from the late 60s, early 70s. And it looked exactly like the sort of work that she was doing back then, her and Victor Vasarely. I was just going, I'm going to go online and check out more of this because it's fascinating, and it sort of seemed to speak to the way that everything is connected, because I'm sure they didn't know that. But there's just this sort of this deeper connection between the sort of the sensitive soul and this kind of the sound on matter thing that was, which just absolutely blew me away, that thing. And positive language. If you don't know, or if you haven't had a chance to, go onto YouTube and listen to the Agincourt speech, if you don't know it already, from Henry V. It's the point before the battle.
Did you say Henry V?
Yes, it's by Shakespeare, and it's just the point before the battle where it looks like they're going to get overwhelmed, and Henry V takes the situation of people's depression and fear and just builds it to this beautiful positivity. And it's definitely, if you're looking at how to take a negative and turn it into a positive, it's a centuries old perfect example, and I couldn't recommend it enough. Wonderful.
Well, thank you for those.
Every time I feel a bit overwhelmed, I just dial that one up.
Well, those are great references. You said Bridget Riley.
Yep.
And then Henry V. Did you call it the Edinburgh speech? What did you say it was?
Agincourt. Agincourt.
Agincourt. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And anybody that wants to look up some of this stuff about cymatics, the two people the Caldini plate, right? So Chaldini, you'll see all kinds of cool stuff about that. A lot of people now are making music using cymatics and hooking up speakers and things like that to these Caldini plates, and are making these amazing art patterns with music, right? So it's music personified, matter, taking form through sound. And then the other thing is Hans Jenny. If you look him up, Jenny, Jenny, he was one of the people that back in the 60s was doing all this work with cymatics and electric plates and using different media to create matter and shapes and forms. So check that out. There's a lot of great stuff about cymatics on the internet that you can see. All right. Anybody else? What's up, Mandy? What do you got to say about this?
Hi, Stuart. Yeah, I love all these bits as well. And some of these, I think that over the last 2 years, because we've had these sessions and everything, and we've been talking about it, it comes up when you hear it or when somebody else says it, doesn't it? It just comes back to you. So the one for me is try, and you said it as well. So before you did it, it was like, yeah, every time someone says they're going to try and do something, I go, do or do not, there is no try. It's like, I can't help it. It's like, I look at you as if you're mad. But it's like, that takes it out of it straight away. Something else I'd heard for failure was it's a first attempt in learning. I can't remember what the URE stands for, but see it as a first attempt in learning. And impossible always makes me think about Alice in Wonderland, the Johnny Depp version, where she says she's done 6 impossible things before breakfast. I don't know if you've seen that, but I love that because she does. He always says to her, just do 6 impossible things before breakfast. So it always almost says in a way, like you say, nothing is impossible unless you think it is. And can't, yes, it's best to change it to can, but if you have said can't, say yet. I can't do this yet, but I'm going to be able to do it. I can't do it yet. One of the ones I say quite a lot that I've always been trying to find another word for is hope, but not I'm hoping for something, but I hope you've had a good day. I hope you have a nice birthday. And all that lot. It's like, what can you say? So I can't really put I believe you will, or but I trust you. I trust you will have a good one. I think I can probably use more. I trust you'll have a lovely day. So I'm going to try to use that one a lot more. Because I know when I look at it, it's like I hope. Well, I'm hoping. What if you don't? And it doesn't fit. There's one that I sort of worked out myself once with my son when it sounds weird, but every Wednesday he goes to his dad's on a Tuesday night, and every Wednesday morning he'll come in, and my cats will go into panic when they hear him coming through the front door at 7:15. And I used to say, it's just James coming in. And then I said to myself, but it's not just James coming in, it's James coming in, because it makes them look as if they're just James and they're not special. Yeah, exactly. And I said, don't worry, James, you're not just. And I don't say it anymore now. I say it's James coming in because he's special. He's not just James. So and it can really make somebody feel that way, can't it? It's just that person. And someday I think it's like another book, I think when I do this or when I get this, I will do this. So you wait for that thing in the future and it never comes, or there's always something else, isn't there, that you're looking for. And I think awesome. I use awesome a lot, but I use that also because over here, we use it so little in a sense. Everything is just, yeah, it's okay, or it's good. They don't use fantastic or awesome. And it's just like, just say something a little bit more out there. Don't just, oh yeah, it's okay. We're just so understated over here that we need that a little bit more to get people to be a bit more overstated, I think. And then there was one more. Sometimes I ask the universe for something, but it might only be passing it over to the universe and saying, right, okay, universe, you take control of this. I know you've got my back. You do what you think is right. But then at the end of it, I'll just say thank you. So I just say thank you, and then I'll go on and believe that whatever they're doing is the right thing for me, and it's going that way. Because I don't tend to do the other. I don't see myself saying things like by divine decree and so shall it be. It just isn't me. But just to say something like thank you, and then it believes that that's going to happen. And I think that's probably sums up most of those for me. The other ones were great too, but those are the ones that really sort of, meant something to me. So yeah, thank you. Gets us thinking again.
Awesome. Thank you. So I like the concept, and this is, as our friend Missy would say, it's very Goddard to say thank you at the end of a statement like that, because it's kind of living from the end, working from the end. It implies that you already have, it already implies the wish is fulfilled, right? And so by saying thank you, you are acknowledging that you already have that, or you already are that. And yeah, some of those words are very medieval. The so most mote it be and things like that, right? It doesn't quite roll off of the tongue, but that concept of something to seal the deal, right? And maybe that's where amen comes from, right? Yeah. Same kind of deal. I trust this will happen. I believe this will happen. Often I'll say I expect instead of hope. But these are, and again, there is no answer. It's just what works for us, and what, it's about being a little more conscious. And like John said, if we can be that to ourselves, or if we have an accountability partner about that somebody that is not using it as a cudgel, to beat us up with, but somebody that's using this to help us become better people, then I think that's an important thing. Virginia, what's up?
Just a reminder of Louise Hay. She had a big issue with the word should. And I remember her saying that instead of saying I should have, or I should do something, say, if I wanted to, I could do this. And so you're making that item that, you feel you really should be doing, but maybe you don't want to be doing. And, you know, so you're a bad person because you're not doing it. You're turning it into, if I really wanted to, I could do this instead. Anyway, I was going to put something like that in the chat, but it was too involved. So I just thought I'd
I
raise my hand.
appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're at the top of the hour. I'll sign off here in a moment. Mandy, you reminded me when you said, I can't do this, and then you catch yourself yet. It made me think about, we often say, these are some of the more damning words too. I don't know. And on the one hand, you can say that there's a humility in that, right? And we can say that that is a way of acknowledging the things that we still have yet to learn. And on the other hand, it can also be seen as a limiting way of speaking or looking at things, because it implies that you are unable to comprehend or unable to learn something. And so that when you said yet, it gives us the ability to create a temporary or a conditional state that is transitory. And maybe that can be done with all these kinds of things. But thinking about when you say like, oh, I don't know, but I'm gonna find out, or whatever, right? And maybe that's a good use of the word but, is to negate that. I don't know, but, right? Wipe it out, but I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna find that out, right? Because it implies that you are unable or unwilling to know or learn. Anyway, this is a great session. I enjoyed hanging out with you guys today. Thank you for all your insight and input. And join us. Do we have it, John? Do we have any housekeeping? We have anything going on this evening, Tuesday night?
No, all quiet around here. We're just going to get a bunch of work done.
Beautiful. Everybody get stuff done. We'll see you tomorrow morning for general session with our good friend Glenn Henderson. Have a great day. Make it a good one. Get stuff done. Use the right words. Bye.